We're discussing the inyonim of Kedushas HaTefillin, because today's Yom In HaTefillin. And I just want to bring to your attention some incredible stories, because these stories can give a person tremendous chizuk to Tefillin. There was a Talmud of the Chofetz Chaim. Comes into the Chofetz Chaim, and he says, Rebbe, I have no money. I can't afford anything. I can barely put bread on the table. I want to give my kids something for Shabbos. It's so difficult for me. So the Chofetz Chaim, Betzitkus, he was very bothered by this. He started to think about what he could do for this dear Talmud of his to maybe make his life a little bit easier. And the Talmud, before giving the Chofetz Chaim even a chance to speak, said, Rebbe, I came up with an idea. So the Rebbe said, sure, okay, let's hear it. Beautiful, what's the idea? He said, what I'm going to do is I'm going to give up the schar of wearing tefillin for just one day. Just one day. I'll give up the schar, and I'll ask Hashem to pay me in this world. And therefore, with money, okay, and this way I'll have money to support my family, because right now I can barely put bread on the table, and it's very, very hard for me. So I'll give up the schar for one day tefillin to do that. So the Chofetz Chaim thought for a moment, and he said, okay, I want to give you a mashal. He said the following mashal. Imagine you walk in to a grocery store, supermarket, and you need a loaf of bread. A loaf of bread costs you $2.50, whatever, okay? You have a brand new bill that just came out. It's $1 million bill, right? It's a bill that is $1 million. Now that's all you have. You don't have any change on you. So you take it out your pocket and you give it to the guy, and you're like, okay, can I pay for my bread? It's $2.50. Here's money. Have you got change? The guy looks at him and says, I'm really sorry. I've got no change to give you. He's like, but I have enough money to pay for it. He said, I know you have plenty of money. You can buy the whole store, never mind the whole street. But I'm really sorry. I haven't got enough change to give you. So the Chofetz Chaim like this. Chazal tell us, Schar mitzvah b'haya al maleka. There is no mitzias of reward in this world for one mitzvah that you do. What does that mean? Hashem can't do it? Hashem will do anything. Rather, what it means is, says the Chofetz Chaim, there is no reward that is enough in this world for one mitzvah. Said the Chofetz Chaim, you cannot give up your schar, even if you wanted to, because there's no amount of reward that you can get for wearing tefillin one day. Forget about day after day. One day wearing tefillin. There is nothing in this world that will ever pay you for wearing tefillin one day. Just to give you an idea, next time I have to put my tefillin on, I forgot, I'm late, whatever. Just remember, wearing tefillin on one day. There is no amount of happiness. There is no amount of simcha. There's no amount of reward. There's no amount of money. There's no amount of pleasure. Nothing in this world that can pay you back for wearing tefillin for one day. There's a boy in a wheelchair that came to the Heilige Baba Sali. And he came to Baba Sali, had a leg injury after the Yom Kippur War here in Israel. And the doctors basically said, there's nothing we could do for your leg. We might have to amputate it. Now, he was very worried to have an amputated leg. That's terrible. So he came in a wheelchair, waited in line, went to go and see the Baba Sali, a very, very holy Sephardi Jew, a Kabbalist, and one of the big tzaddikim of the generation. So he went to ask him for a bracha. And the Baba Sali said to him, tell me something, do you put on tefillin every single day? And the guy said, not really. He said, do you keep Shabbos? Not really. He said, well, thank Hashem that you have at least one leg. The boy started crying. So the Baba Sali said, listen, I can give you a bracha for a complete refuah shalema. Complete. Okay? If you tell me that you're going to be makabel on yourself to put on tefillin. The guy thought about it for a minute. It was a big commitment, right? He's not used to doing these things. Maybe he wasn't brought up that way. But he said, you know what? Excuse me. To have a complete refuah shalema, I'm willing to do it. Baba Sali said, stand up. I said, what do you mean stand up? I can't just stand up. I'm that guy. It just doesn't work that way. No, stand up. Okay, the Baba Sali tells you to do something, you do it, right? Right, Shmuel? So he stood up, and miracle upon miracles. Everyone, his family were there. They'd seen him in a wheelchair. The guy couldn't move his leg. Never mind, he just stood up, and he just walked out the wheelchair. They saw it with their own eyes. Such is the Kabbalah of wearing tefillin. Tefillin, we don't realize. An incredible mitzvah. Let me tell you now a really amazing story. Okay. You've got to listen to this. Rabbi Yosef Wallace said over this story. It's such an incredible story. Rabbi Yosef Wallace is the director of Arachim, and I'm zoicha to be able to speak to them sometimes as well for them, make videos for them and whatever. And listen to this incredible story. He was in a concentration camp, okay? And there was a yid there that was being taken to his death. All of a sudden, as this yid was being led to be killed, this yid flung a little bag at his father. Rabbi Yosef Wallace telling of the story, at my father, he said. Judah Wallace. So this bag is being thrown his way. He quickly caught it, because natural reaction is something, he quickly chapped it. And he quickly, went away. He thought that, maybe he's had a bit of bread, so he figured, I'm going to die, so I might as well give it to another Jew. He opens it up, and he finds a pair of tefillin. Now, Judah was very, very frightened, because he knows that if you found tefillin in the camps, you're in huge trouble. Not just you, the whole bunkhouse, everyone's going to be in trouble. You'll be put to death instantly, and who knows what trouble will be for everybody else. So what he did was, until further notice, till he knew what to do, he hid the tefillin under his shirt, and he ran to the bunkhouse, not knowing what to do. In the morning, just before roll call, he was still in the bunkhouse. He put on the tefillin, because he figured, I've got the opportunity for a mitzvah, let me put it on, right? Unexpectedly, a German officer came in, and he ordered him to get the tefillin off, remove the tefillin. He took down the number on Judah's arm, because obviously that identified who it was that did it, and he ordered him to go straight to the appel. At the appel, in front of thousands, appel is the roll call, thousands of silent Jews standing there in the freezing cold. The officer called out Judah's number. Now, he had no choice. They call out your number, you have no choice. They'll find you anyway. So he stepped forward, and the German officer waved the tefillin in the air and said, "Dog, I sentence you to death by public hanging for wearing these." Now, Judah, there's nothing he could do in this situation. He did what he was told. He was placed on a stool, and a noose was placed around his neck. Now, before he was hanged, the officer said in a mocking tone, "Dog, what is your last wish?" And Judah said, "I want to wear my tefillin for the very last time." The officer was dumbfounded. How can you ask for such a thing? Come on, you're about to die. But, okay. So he handed Judah the tefillin. As Judah put them on, he said the posuk that many of us say when we wrap around the tefillin of our finger, right? Va'arastech li la'olam, right? But tzedek of a mishpah. Basically, we cling to the Rebbeinu Shalom, we have connection with Hashem, we're married to Hashem. It's a very beautiful thing. Now, could you imagine the scene of a yid that with a noose around his neck, wearing tefillin on his head and his arm? But that was the scene that the entire camp of Jews in the freezing cold were forced to watch as they awaited the impending hanging of the Jew who had dared to break a rule against wearing tefillin. Even the women from the next door camp were lined up at the entrance by the barbed wire that separated them from the men's camp, forced to watch this horrible, horrible sight. As Judah turned to watch the silent crowd, he saw tears in people's eyes. Even at that moment, he was about to be hanged. He was shocked. Yidden were crying? How did they still have tears in their eyes after being in the camps for so long? Where were these tears coming from? Impulsively, he called out in Yiddish, "Yidden, don't cry. With tefillin on, I'm the victor, I won. Don't you understand? I won." The German officer understood the Yiddish and was infuriated. He said to him, "Judah, you dog, you think you're the winner? Hanging is too good for you. You're going to get another kind of death." Judah, my father, as he says, Rabbi Wallace explains, was taken from the stool, and the noose was removed from his neck. He was forced into a squatting position, and two huge rocks were placed under his arms, and he was told that he would be receiving 25 lashes to his head, the head to which he had dared position his tefillin. The officer told him that if he dropped even one of the rocks, he would be shot immediately. In fact, because it was such an extremely painful form of death, the officer advised him, "Drop the rocks now. You'll never survive the 25 lashes in your head. Nobody ever does." Judah's response was, "No, I'm not giving you the pleasure." At the 25th lash, Judah lost consciousness and was left for dead. He was about to be dragged to the pile of corpses, after which he would have been burned in a ditch, when another Jew saw him, shoved him to the side, covered his head with a rag so people didn't realize he was alive. Eventually, after he recovered conscious fully, he crawled to the nearest bunkhouse that was on a raised piles, and he hid under it until he was strong enough to come under and move on his own power. 2 months later, he was liberated. During the hanging and beating episode. A 17-year-old girl had been watching the events from the women's side of the fence. After liberation, she made her way to the men's camp and found Judah. She walked over to him and said, "I've lost everyone. I don't want to be alone anymore. I saw what you did that day when the officer wanted to hang you. Will you marry me?" The rest is history. Rabbi Wallace's parents, this couple became parents, walked over to the Klosenberger Rebbe and asked that he actually make the Mesader Kiddushin. The Rebbe, whose Kiddush Hashem was legendary, wrote out a ksuba by hand from memory and married the couple. And Rabbi Wallace has that handwritten ksuba ad hayom hazeh. And this is the scene that they actually saw. This is the picture that was taken at the time of him with tefillin. Rabbi say, Baruch Hashem, none of us have these nisyonos, and we should never have this nisyonos. But just think what a yid would do for tefillin. Next time it's cold, your blankets are nice and warm. It's good. Annoying the Beis Medrash, have to drive, they have to walk, they have to go down the stairs, whatever it is. Just think about the Mesiras Nefesh that Klal Yisrael have had throughout the generations. Just end off with one last story. I said this in Auschwitz by one of the cattle cars that was donated there. I have a cousin of mine who lives in Tel Aviv, who originally comes from Australia. One of the very wealthy people in Australia. He had a yacht there that the Queen of England would come to Australia and go on his yacht. He owns a lot of Australia's football team and TV channels, and he's a very, very public figure. I met all the prime ministers and people in the world. I have a book about him. Anyway, I went to visit him in his apartment in Tel Aviv not so long ago. And we were talking, and he was telling me a story. And the story he told me was that his father it's a whole story, and I have the whole book. If you want to read the book, I even have the book at home that he gave me, that they wrote a book about this story. His father basically brought with him on the cattle cart, when they packed the Yidden in to go to the concentration camps, he packed his tefillin, which was very dangerous, but he did it anyway, and he took it out with him as well. And there's a whole story how they managed to smuggle it in, smuggle out, whatever it was. And he was shot to death because he had his tefillin, and he died basically because of his tefillin. So this Yid from Tel Aviv, his father, donated and dedicated the only cattle cart that we can see basically in Auschwitz. If you go to Auschwitz-Birkenau, we went there with Yeshiva a couple of years ago, Mitzvah Shem will go again, and we went to that cattle cart, right, which my cousin basically donated over there. It's the only one pretty much that was donated, and it was a whole story how he got it there. And inside, because my grandmother was there at the time, right before they closed it and locked it, now there's a padlock on it, but when they made the procession, Rabbi Lau was there, the Chief Rabbi of Israel, they took his father's tefillin and they put it in there as like a memory. Now I'm sitting there, he's telling me over the story, and I'm thinking to myself, he's not religious, okay? For whatever reason, we don't judge. He's not religious. And I'm thinking to myself, your father was Moisei Nefesh his life. He gave up his life for tefillin, and you don't wear tefillin, right? Don't you think that's a shame? He gave up his life for tefillin, and you, his son, don't even put on tefillin. How does that make sense? And I'm thinking this, right? I'm not going to tell that to him. He's an older man. He's 90, he must be at least 94 years old, right? Somewhere along there. Anyway, he obviously read my thoughts, because he says to me that he was by this just happened, this story, about a year ago. And he said to me he was by one of the doctors that he was by, a Sephardi guy. And the Sephardi guy was telling of the story too. And the Sephardi said to him, "Ma, אתה משוגע? אתה לא נותן תפילין, מה אבא שלך?" Right in there. "I don't understand you. You don't put on tefillin. Your father died because of tefillin. What's the matter with you?" So he said, it hit me. You're right. You're right. And he told me that just before I came, about 2 months before I came, he started to wear tefillin every single day. Right? It's an amazing, amazing thing. And he saw bracha, and he saw amazing things in his life. Rabbi say, we don't have these struggles. Baruch Hashem, we don't have these nisyonos. But let's remember the koyach of tefillin. Every time we put on tefillin, we become attached to the Rebbeinu Shalom. It's an opportunity that we get every single day of the week. Shabbos doesn't need it because Shabbos has its own noise. But during the week, we have an opportunity to put on tefillin. People rush to take off their tefillin. People, okay, I'll do it later. No. Chaperayim. Putting on your tefillin, you become married. Become married to the Rebbeinu Shalom. And Be'ez Hashem, it should give us chizik to wear tefillin, to enjoy tefillin. And Be'ez Hashem, the Rebbeinu Shalom will give us tremendous chaba oilam haba for all the tefillin that we wear.